Welcome to our 14th set of exchanges, and within this 14th set of exchanges, this is the concluding fourth part of the series where the Sehna-Vavtu approach's evidence has been given for a research hypothesis and research methodology, giving the evidence of how well-being has been created. This is part of how the mind has changed its exploration since 2008. Is giving evidence not the end of research, or is it the beginning? If it is the beginning, then it is the beginning of what? Giving evidence of something just proves that it is possible. But how to apply it in our situation, in our context? This also the evidence has shown. What further steps are needed from here? The further steps require a change of mindset. As Einstein said, that a problem cannot be solved from the same mindset that has created it in the first place. What is the current mindset? We need to revisit that first. The evidence over the last 4 decades has been given, but let us just look at the last 2 decades. What has happened to the world in the last 2 decades? The world suffered a dot-com burst at the turn of the century. It witnessed a global economic recession in 2008. 2020 witnessed a pandemic. What has the world learned from them? What is the nature of the mindset that caused the problem? Einstein would state that a different mindset is needed to solve it. How can we prepare such a mindset? Can the biggest challenge of the world be linked to our course design or course content? To teach application of knowledge, we should demonstrate it. How to do it? Who will do it? When should it be done? Where and in what manner? How to transform course curriculum in a way that demonstrates these. The purpose of demonstrating this exercise is to show that gathering evidence and thinking about application of your research in the real world is the way forward for your PhD research. We have looked at the biggest challenge of the world only to demonstrate how to think about your PhD thesis. We answer the question, who will do it, by showing that each one of us can accept responsibility by saying, I will do it. When should it be done starts with the answer, let's begin now. Where will it be done too has an answer. It begins with an inner search. The mind has to begin with becoming one with the solution. So, living with the solution and not just taking as something that exists outside. Archimedes was given as an example of the loss of body consciousness when living with the way to solve a problem. Where to solve the problem? In the mind first. In what manner? In a manner that is within social norms, maybe not like Archimedes, and in a manner that creates benefit for all, not just a few. The broadening of the vision is critical. How to do it? For this, research methodology asks us to review current state of knowledge and add to that state. Let's do that. Let us look at how the problem was identified and what solution is envisaged. Lecture 2 started with finding what is the problem, why and when did it arise. Then lecture 3 started with finding who can solve it and how can it be solved. And we found that OECD says that values and attitudes are needed to solve it. It raised the question by when to do it and answered it by saying it can be done or it should be done by 2030. So they found that education is the solution. Now, when to change it? The answer is now. Which brings us to the question, how to do it? This was the challenge of designing the research ethics course using research methodology. The challenge for education had shifted from things that can be taught in lectures in classrooms to things which are nothing to do with the teacher. All goals of character, values, transformation of attitudes, etc., have nothing to do with something which is in a textbook alone. It has something to do with the change which is within a student. How to do such a transformation? We have seen evidence that it is possible. We have also seen that it works, as its evidence is available over 4 decades. We have also seen that it can create the goal that OECD seeks of human well-being. But how to apply it in today's context and in today's education? Is the evidence given going to be just a case study that can be taught and students will imbibe? It is left to students to imbibe it in the manner that they want. Will some teachers just visit the facilities and make some students visit these facilities too? Will that achieve the purpose? Will all these be the simple additions to current curriculum till the next crisis comes? Or do we need to go further than that? Do we need to comprehend how human transformation takes place in the Sehna-Wavtu tradition that is thousands of years old? Do we need to absorb that in our education system? These are the real questions for application. For this research is needed. The OECD and World Economic Forum seek transformation of attitudes. They seek values and character. What is the difference in the present and ancient Indian education in attitude, values, etc.? Let us look at the motivation as an understanding and application of current ideas of economics. The economic problems faced in the world can best be tackled if we understand them first. Then we can see what is the motivation in ancient Indian wisdom. After that, we can see if the difference in motivation created by education ideas leads to transformation of attitudes. With the new attitudes of ancient wisdom, what will be the implication on character and understanding of values? The present understanding of economics, the way to use human potential for survival, is by applying the profit maximization idea of Adam Smith, the father of economics. Is this why the 2008 Nobel laureate in economics felt sad that no school of economics could predict the 2008 recession? The otherwise open-minded discipline indulges in much self-criticism. If it opens to the idea of economics without single-minded profit maximization as the sole goal, it may use concepts of ancient Indian wisdom. This tradition looks at natural limits to human behavior inculcated as an attitude of living life. Thus, it helps the human mind arrive at an attitude of natural restraints. That is why education is filled with awareness of human potential within a study of limits. This is the reason why the book How to Prevent Recession is in two parts. Concepts that give awareness and perception of current ideas that lead to self-imposed limits of human behavior, and these limits are expressed as a natural choice. So there are two parts of the book: awareness and study of limits. While profit maximization in all circumstances without any restraint is a natural choice today, self-restraint when needed is a natural choice using ancient wisdom. What transforms attitudes to make this self-restraint a natural choice? This method of ancient wisdom leads to methodology for ethics that we research here. What is the motivation of using the body with a mind filled with awareness for economic activity? It was different from the single-minded profit maximization in all situations, irrespective of consequences. That was not the way ancient Indian wisdom visualized the use of the human body. It never thought that the human body will be used for a single-minded profit maximization in every possible situation without thinking of the consequences. Instead, the motivation in Sanskrit was paropkaram idam shariram. This is totally different from single-minded profit maximization. The motivation is paropkaram idam shariram, well-being. The ideas of ancient wisdom were not quantitative but sought to develop an attitude with which quantitative work was to be done. It sought to develop an attitude that the human mind should be taught in a manner that it can visualize that the purpose of using the body and the mind is to create well-being for all. The similes that were used to develop such an attitude were, for example, tarovar phal nahi khat hai, sarvar priya na pan. The idea that the tree does not eat its own fruit and the river does not drink its own water leads to the idea of wealth for well-being of all. This survived for thousands of years. The idea of Ubuntu is no longer so inexplicable now. The methodology for the Sehna Bhavtu approach thus starts with togetherness and extends not only to the busyness of life but also to business. Recessions are caused by a myopic focus on selfishness, even when its severely adverse impact on the big picture is so very obvious. This was seen in 2008. Business and society are interlinked not only through prosperity, they are linked by the attitude towards life. That is why OECD wishes education to transform attitude. Research and its methodology should enable this. So let us see what the EU textbook in research says. We see in an earlier lecture that the EU textbook on ethics in research, how it helped us out. Lecture 3 pointed out that the role of the cognitive good through investigation was reached. So the conclusion reached is what distinguishes research from audit or journalism, and the working definition given by the EU textbook on ethics and research is that research aims to generate information, knowledge and understanding or some other relevant cognitive good, and does so by means of a systematic investigation, unquote. Thus, the role of the cognitive good through investigation was pointed out. Is this more about the health of the mind than knowledge that the human mind is given and checked for? So that is where education went into another dimension, and this dimension is recognized by the EU handbook. Then we went to the Saunders research onion. The close link of business with society made us choose a business research methodology to see how to bring out this cognitive good. And what did we see when we tried to do that? So we saw that now that we have the data of our research, we can look back at the method. What was the point we were trying to make throughout all these sessions? We were trying to point out that the essence is critical in any method. If the essence behind the methodology is sought, whether in research strategies or research approaches, that will be helpful. The essence in our case was to find a way that transforms students so that their actions in future prevent social pain. We use the example of a teacher using the essence of methods to communicate with students. This is what made the teacher different from facts which are just available on the internet. We concluded that it was the research philosophy that is the most important starting point. What are the formative ideas from which the thoughts emerge? It defines motivations and later attitudes that OECD wants to change. These motivations lead to character, values. An attitude of lifelong learning emerges from the nascent cradle of philosophy. The philosophy of profit maximization in all circumstances without an eye on social implications has led us to contrast profit maximization with the Sehnavatu approach, which starts with the habit of individual goals being achieved in a collective pursuit, and that is the start of every session, every class, the start of the origin of thought, the start of philosophy, the cradle from which all ideas emerge for us to begin our search, inner search, research, and that is the method, the methodology that was used. Because it all boils down to philosophy of life, lectures 5 to 8 traced the roots of the philosophy of life. Lecture 4 concluded that philosophy is a guiding tool of a method or methodology. Hence, we wanted to trace back philosophy that guided ideas in education. However, OECD had limited its study to 150 years. This gave a time frame of study which was realistic and well documented to us. We needed to study what was the influence on education of philosophical ideas that their application led to social pain. We needed to study that. Then lectures 5 to 8 looked at these ideas and then tried to sneak back to the time of Descartes too. The discovery found out how the functioning of the mind was treated as a natural function where thoughts were secreted similar to the way the liver secretes bile. This was totally opposed to the way ancient wisdom gave prime importance to the development of thought and treated that as sacred and central to the education process. Scientific materialism was a dominant force during the time many inventions and discoveries were made and theorized. Did theory carry this philosophical influence? The synthesis of urea, an organic compound, from two inorganic compounds finished the belief that living things had a vital force. Louis Pasteur thought he had finally proved that living things have a vital force. MIT's Professor Chomsky mentioned that the missed focus of the mind in science. We will revisit his quotation again. because Professor Chomsky writes, and I quote, with the disappearance of the scientific concept of the body, material, physical, etc., what happens to the second substance, mind, which was left untouched by Newton's startling discoveries? A plausible answer was suggested by John Locke, also within the reigning theological framework. He wrote that just as God added to matter such inconceivable properties as gravitational attraction, he might also have superadded to matter the capacity of thought. In the years that followed, Locke's God was reinterpreted as nature, a move that opened the topic to inquiry. Unquote. This is MIT's Professor Chomsky. Darwin thought of thought as more wonderful than gravity, a property of matter. It remained inconceivable, a reflection of our cognitive limitations. Is finance or income the source of well-being, or is it a mental resolve? Our evidence has proved that it is the latter. OECD's indexes of well-being rightly state the importance of income. However, we hypothesize that education that concentrates on teaching students to focus on the outcome of their actions is more likely to create well-being. This implies a critical focus on the human mind and development of its discriminating ability. If this be true, then the focus again shifts to what is inside the human being from what is outside the human being. After all, though income is earned by human effort and skill, it is the skill which determines the income and not vice versa. Therefore, education develops the skill that determines income. If it can develop that skill by using the human mind, can it develop other skills that lead to well-being also? Our evidence proves that the same education curriculum, if supplemented with concepts of ancient wisdom, can produce the desired well-being in society. What is the first thing we need to use from this evidence? For this, we return back to our discussion in lecture 5 to 8 about philosophy and its application in later sessions. Feuerbach and Hegel had opposing views. Feuerbach, according to Karl Marx's co-author Engels, sounded the death knell of the German Enlightenment school. Session 9 summarized the contradictory philosophical thoughts guiding society as follows, and we will describe that because lecture 9 sought to find a philosophy that clarifies apparent contradictions. Lecture 9 found ancient Indian wisdom could resolve Feuerbach's and Hegel's clash. It used Stanford Encyclopedia, and I quote Stanford Encyclopedia again. And in the thesis, Feuerbach argues that by positing the human essence outside of man in the ethereal realm of absolute spirit, the Hegelian philosophy perpetuates the theological alienation of human beings from their own essence. Unquote. Is this enough logic to see the essence within humans as sensuousness with a desire to avoid pain? Are Hegel and Feuerbach the turning points in understanding of the very basis of philosophy which guides method and therefore ethics? Or does the confusion start much earlier? Either way, if social pain results, we know that something needs a revisit. Research methodology is just a sub-function of search method, and research ethics are based on clarity about ethics. Without a clarity on ethics, research ethics will not be meaningful. If basis of the thought and ideas is confused or disputed, can well-being result? Lecture 9 finds that philosophy gives the essence, and if you get that, slightly wrong, even slightly wrong, if the essence is not understood, then instead of philosophy, it becomes a full loss for society. So, which philosophy in ancient wisdom has an explanation of where this essence resides to prevent Hegel's unhappy consciousness? Rockmore in the University of California Press's publication states, and I quote, "The unhappy consciousness exhibits cognitive dissonance since the subject is simultaneously committed to conflicting theses." Unquote. Which philosophy removes cognitive dissonance? The philosophy is found in 5,000-year-old ancient Indian texts. It is clearly explained therein that the essence is both within and outside humans everywhere, as in the Isha Upanishad, thousands of years ago, saying Isha Vasyam Idam Sarvam. The term Isha is probably fulfilling reductionism's idea. Its spirit or essence pervades everything, but was not propounded as scientists are interpreting it today for physical world. Individuals were guided to live in the awareness of the essence being within and without. In fact, its practices awakened this dormant awareness within each one. The purpose of education was to enable the discovery of the spirit within each individual, which can lead to the experience everywhere. This transformation leads to attitudes, values, character, etc. getting transformed. And such transformation emerges from a philosophy of living life being practiced at work. If the guiding philosophy that educates the human ideas gets it even slightly wrong, social pain results. Mahatma Gandhi believed about the Isha Upanishad that if all the wisdom texts of India are lost and only the first stanza of Isha Upanishad remains, it is enough to revive all those lost thoughts, because he had realized and experienced the value of the essence. Have OECD, World Economic Forum, got the essence back within humans when redefining their goal? Should we not be grateful to the OECD and the World Economic Forum because they have given goals which bring the essence back within the humans? Our character, transforming attitudes, values, etc., finding the essence of humans? Is education being given the responsibility to bring back this essence? If so, clarity on the basic philosophy of life and understanding of essence is a prerequisite. The Research Ethics course researches that first using research methodology. Has Feuerbach's finding the essence within humans in the form of sensuousness changed the way we perceive the world during education? It finds that the IB curriculum's first way of knowing is sense perception. Using sensuousness and sense perception, the idea of profit maximization is appealing. The idea of Ubuntu is inexplicable and therefore unlikely to find place in a theory that uses sensuousness within humans as the first way of knowing. Does this transform the way we think? Does it transform the way theories are formed, taught, applied? If it does, will it change the way society functions? Lecture 9 had explored this and therefore it needs a revisit. Lecture 9 said, even discoveries by scientists were overtaken by philosophy of the time. Professor Chomsky of MIT has pointed out that, and I quote, the properties of matter, Newton showed, escape the bounds of mechanical philosophy, unquote. Newton was criticized for such a viewpoint. Reductionism ruled then. Scientific discovery, this shows, may be subservient to prevalent attitudes created by philosophy. It is interpreted within limitations of current perceptions, even though its results may be challenging those perceptions. Newton's followers were reductionists, Professor Chomsky of MIT states. He felt that, and I'm quoting, Newton and his followers did attempt to pursue the thoroughly Newtonian and reductionist task of uncovering the general mathematical laws which govern all chemical behavior. Unquote. It was Dalton, Professor Chomsky states, who saved chemistry from reductionism. Let us remember that reductionism has been borrowed from ancient wisdom's idea of the essence pervading everywhere. The essence was never material. It was to be experienced through practices like speaking the truth, which enabled the true human potential to be revealed from within. For those unable to do it, they use the sense organs and the physical forms to discover it. And all the commonality they found, all the commonality that they could find in the universe was the atom. So that was the common building block, the essence, if you see, in the physical world, the atom. Did reductionism not understand the difference in the two concepts? That is, the awareness and the study of limits. These are two different concepts. As discussed in the book How to Prevent Recession, education in ancient Indian wisdom was divided into two parts. The first part dealt with awareness that the human mind should be trained to perceive. This was the way of realizing human potential. The second part of education was a study of the world and the limitations of the human body. This led to the study of limits. The second part, awareness, study of limits. It led to the limits of human behavior depending on the situation. This natural law of limits that is visible in constraints imposed by scientific theories on properties of matter was known as dharma or righteous conduct. Since everything in nature works within limits of laws, human behavior too should develop this sense of understanding and apply it in all situations of work and life. This self-imposed limit to profit maximization when the perceived results are harming others is dharma or ancient wisdom's idea of capitalism. The essence pervades everywhere as the theory of everything, but the physical world works within limits. Was the theory that applies only the essence and not to the material world wrongly thought to apply in the material world too? The concepts of awareness were applied to study of limits. If it did apply as common atoms, when they found that it applied as common atoms, all it can do is lead us back to the underlying unity of creation. Was the misunderstanding of ancient India's wisdom concept of such a unity of essence superimposed on the physical world? Was it a lack of understanding of the twofold nature of education, the very basis of all our problems? As we saw, if the philosophy is misunderstood, the essence is lost. OECD and World Economic Forum have brought the focus back to the essence. So, if these two concepts, which are different, are mixed up, then clarity disappears. Lecture 9 told us that the death of ideas of Enlightenment school was sounded by Feuerbach's theory that may have later been interpreted to imply that sensuousness is the basis of experience of reality. Stanford Encyclopedia states, and I quote, Feuerbach regards sensation as the first condition of willing. Among the specific drives to which Feuerbach refers in his later writings are the drive to self-preservation, the sexual drive, the drive to enjoyment, the drive to activity, and the drive to knowledge. Unquote. The encyclopedia also states, and I quote, Feuerbach occasionally distinguishes between healthy and unhealthy drives, though he has little to say about the standard or criteria for making such a distinction, unquote. As the lecture pointed out, with Bertrand Russell's admission, any lack of clarity on the ethical basis of actions is dangerous, especially in curriculum design. Ancient wisdom has clarity on the nature of laws that govern the physical world, even as the essence that activates them is the same, just as atoms are common to matter. These laws, if confused with the essence, will lead to lack of clarity in results. Similarly, if there is a lack of clarity in the twofold path of teaching in ancient Indian wisdom, all clarity about human actions will be lost. This will lead to multifold problems in society. So, has Feuerbach's sensuousness made interpretation of Jesus' idea of love difficult to comprehend and therefore practice? If the mind is exposed to importance of sense perception in academia, then giving up the human body to take on the pain of mankind is not an idea that has any relevance to real life. Academics prepare students for life. Feuerbach talks about sensation of pain. Can pain too give joy? Lecture 9 gives the example of every mother on the planet. If we ask the mother who gave us birth, if she suffered pain during childbirth, she will say yes. So should giving birth to children be stopped? Can pain not result in permanent joy? If we ask the mother if she experienced a deep joy during childbirth, the answer in most cases will again be yes. If we ask if the experience of joy was greater than pain, mostly the answer will be yes. That is why children continue to be born for thousands of years, because the pain was temporary but the joy was permanent. The capacity of pain and joy to be there together and searching for a perspective that looks beyond them is the basis of selfless love. Mothers are a living example of selfless love. Is their love not transgressing boundaries of Feuerbach's sensuousness? Can this one example not guide us to reject that idea? Let us look at our evidence. Are students who serve in the hospital guided by sensuousness? Sense perception is not denied in ancient wisdom as a primary way of knowing. This way of knowing, however, should be directed over time to other ways of knowing that lie beyond the sense organs too. An inability to take the students towards the latter beyond the sense organs makes it difficult to explain why profit maximization should not be the sole aim of business. It makes it difficult to explain why something needs to be done because it is what we all collectively need. Sense perception may not comprehend the idea of sacrifice that may be needed to protect society. Ancient wisdom, however, seeks to develop it naturally within each individual as a part of a study of limits or dharma. That this is a way of living life inculcated in education. It is translated as righteous conduct, doing the right thing at the right time just because it needs to be done and is the right thing to do. Therefore, a sense of satisfaction that cannot be easily measured as GDP is created by seeking the right thing to do as a matter of habit in graduating students. It leads some of them to serve in hospitals at salaries much lower than what the private sector would offer out of a natural choice. What is the nature of education that brings out such a human quality? The challenge of transformation lies in practice, not in theory. The challenge of transformation also now lies in formulating a theory. However, philosophy, the basis of theory, has to be correct. A research ethics course can give the theory, but its results will be based only on practice. Hence, we decided in the very first session that we will practice speaking the truth and following righteous conduct, because practice will change even theory, because practice will give evidence and evidence can change theory. It is because of the course instructor's confidence in all of you that the course is being taught. This course is only meant for practitioners of speaking the truth and righteous conduct. We have been waiting ever since 2008 for a university, for an institute to say with confidence that yes, my students will do it. It took 2020. It took this course instructor who has this confidence in all of you to say, to commit that yes, this is the set of students who will speak the truth and and follow righteous conduct. And when he took on the commitment on your behalf, was this course born. Because the challenge is in transformation of practice, not transformation of theory. To those who do not practice this, by this time of session 14, they would have been criticizing the course instead of participating in it. Because simply teaching to those who listen but do not practice is a waste of their time and a waste of our collective energy. Society is not going to benefit by remembering who said what, but by our personal conduct. Whether Hegel said it, or Stanford Encyclopedia said it, or Feuerbach said it, is not going to matter to society. Your personal conduct is what will shape society, reshape society. The standard way of education may be based on checking if you remember which philosopher said what. Then there may be some discussion on it. In the Sehna-Vavtu approach, the most relevant for society is self-evaluation. How do you evaluate your responsibility in each situation and live up to it? That is why we have a self-evaluation every day, which you have agreed to do, that you evaluate yourself. Did I speak the truth? Did I follow righteous conduct? Did I speak the truth softly, sweetly? So the habit of self-evaluation, that's what needs to be inculcated, because that gives the sense of responsibility. And this sense of responsibility starts with speaking the truth and developing a desire to find out what will be the righteous conduct, what is the right thing to do in each situation. That is how there is cooperation, not only in learning but also in evaluation. Self-evaluation is the core of the method or methodology of Sehna-Vavtu that leads to ethics and research ethics arising naturally in each situation from within each student. This cooperation spirit is revived at the beginning of each session or class to create an atmosphere of collective search for the truth. Speaking the truth enables, in the experience of ancient Indian wisdom, revealing the truth about the individual. This means that all individuals are unique and their talents and abilities are unique too. Speaking the truth reveals to each one this true nature, this true uniqueness. Then the questions that are asked in class are based on their perceptions, their unique perceptions, and therefore they add value both to the teacher and the others who are taught. This is how value is added to the education process. As uniqueness of individuality is discovered, so is creativity. This starts as an ever expanding process of growth and application of knowledge and wisdom. Let me give an example of what theory says and how practice is. This is an interesting example. India's former Vice President Mr. Krishan Kant had related his conversation with Vinoba Bhave to me long ago, a couple of decades ago. It demonstrates the different points of view that are recorded in books and taught, and the different point of view which is recorded in human hearts. What attitude touches the heart of society and is remembered is shown in this example. Ancient Indian wisdom transforms the human heart. When a compassionate heart perceives a problem, the attitude it has is very different. Society works practically on values, attitudes, etc. The OECD, the World Economic Forum, now conclude that these are the qualities needed. They want education to make them emerge in humans through education. Until transformation of the heart is done, this is difficult to achieve. These qualities are innate within human beings. Theory and textbooks are in a domain that is outside the human being. Until theory resolves this difference of understanding, mass transformation that is sought through education may be difficult to achieve. Mass information dissemination through a factory line production way in education has never been the way of ancient wisdom. Therefore, the core of education lies in knowing what are the ideas or concepts that transform hearts. That's the first learning. So let me relate Vinoba Bhave's observation, which was, and this is the conversation which the former vice president told me. The first prime minister of Free India was a highly educated and respected person. He had written a book on India and its history. Vinoba Bhave said that Jawaharlal has written in his book Discovery of India that during the reign of Akbar the Great, there was a saint called Kabir. He's trying to tell people that there was also a saint like Kabir. This is the point which we will take forward to see how perceptions emerge from attitudes and form future attitudes too. Texts that are studied are taken as truth. So that truth defines attitudes. Akbar was called great. Perceptions of events depend on attitudes. These perpetuate further attitudes. We saw that earlier, that philosophy binds even the interpretation of science. Vinoba Bhave said that he had travelled the length and breadth of India during the Bhudan movement, where he had gone to loot with love, and he had interacted closely with the villagers of India. He said that he would often ask the villagers if they knew or remember Akbar the Great. He observed that there was nobody who seemed to remember. On trying to prod their memory, he discovered some villagers commenting that, "Are you referring to a king who was ruling during the time of Sant Kabir or Saint Kabir?" This difference of perception recorded by the observation of Vinoba Bhave can help us understand the difference between what we think is important for society and what actually may be important for society. Perceptions about importance are taught, but when they are applied, do they work? This is a challenge for all theory. Hence, the practice of 4 human values reveals a different perception than what current theory may be stating, even though the facts remain the same. Nobody can deny that Akbar was called great and that he ruled. But the perception about what moved society then may be a useful input in case we wish to transform attitudes today. Selfless love exhibited by Saint Kabir marked a greater social change. Political changes come and go, but social changes are long lasting. To prevent recurrence of 2008 and 2020, a social, not political change may be necessary. The current attitudes that we teach, we learn, they glorify greatness. Lest some think that this goodness versus greatness debate is just a play of words. It is not. This debate is the core of attitude with which we learn history to dream of a future. The theory of knowledge, let us remember, uses 8 ways of knowing: sense perception, reason, emotion, faith, imagination, intuition, memory, language. The goodness versus greatness debate relates to the very first way of knowing. Greatness is seen through sense perception. That is why kings dress in a manner that makes them appear grand. Goodness is beyond sense perception. Jesus, Buddha, and in modern times Gandhi, Vinoba, Kabir, etc. did not appeal to sense perception in the manner kings did. Yet they appealed to the hearts, transformed them. This is the biggest evidence that sense perception, the very first way of knowing, may not be the best. The best way may be beyond sense perception, especially if the new goals of OECD, World Economic Forum, have to be met. Goodness touches the heart. Greatness touches the senses. What impact does this have on other ways of knowing? Reason, emotion, faith, imagination. What is the reason that led Alexander the Great? Can we tell? Why did he do it? Ancient wisdom and maybe World Economic Forum and OECD would like to see what attitude did he seek to, or what attitude does praising his work seek to spread? If imbibing deeply in a student's mind that conquering territory after territory is a sign of greatness, will marketing not be thought of as warfare and customer segments need to be conquered? They are something which need to be conquered. But have these conquests changed thoughts, transformed hearts, and led to attitudes that sustain a civilization or society? For how many generations did the rule of a dynasty last after a great king? Could he perpetrate a civilizational change that can be an inspiration for eternity? Was the conquest to spread a thought, an idea, or an ideal, or was it a glory to be celebrated and taught? Was the fight of a victory of good over evil? Was the conquest to spread this thought? Should such an attitude of seeking personal wealth and glory be celebrated and taught? That wars are just fought to grab kingdoms for their own personal glory, for their own personal wealth, and that's greatness is taught to every child. He's tested how well he remembers it. He's graded according to these ideas of greatness. It is true that conquests led to land transfers. Who do these land transfers benefit? They get transferred from one set of kings to another set of kings, from one set of ruling class to a new one. If from a war a transformational mindset is created, that is a cause for celebration. For from such transformational mindsets, civilizations can be built. Only if a game is played in the right spirit does it become enjoyable. Hegel, Feuerbach and Isha Upanishad all have a different experience of where the spirit is and what is the right spirit, which we will follow to develop values, attitudes, character. Which of these spirits will we follow? Will marketing, business move towards a different spirit after 2008 and 2020? This is how the way of knowing, IB's way of knowing reason can be impacted by the manner in which ideas are presented for investigating. It all boils down to truth. We have to find out whose truth. The king's truth was that he was great. But what was the truth of all other citizens? Is that too not important? Let us see the impact of nature of truth investigated on other ways that IB talks of knowing: emotion, faith, imagination. Are great conquests emerging from emotions of peace and love? The end result of conquests is land transfer. We have seen the largest peaceful land transfer in human history from the emotion of selfless love. Yet it does not find any place in history books, while Alexander finds a prime place in it. Which emotion are we celebrating in the child's mind? What are we teaching him as the right emotion to use in life? What impact will this have on his or her attitude, his or her values, his or her character, etc., etc.? These are all primary concerns of OECD, World Economic Forum now. Character, values, attitudes. So let's come to IB's next way of knowing: faith. Will children have faith in the path of Alexander or Jesus, or will they have faith in the path of Jesus? Are we spending equal emphasis on telling them about the alternative way? Are they too young to choose the right way and need to be told that Jesus, Buddha, or modern Gandhi, Vinova have experimented with truth and share the results of their efforts? Should we not share the results of their efforts too, as evidence before a child of the possibilities that can be done with human resolve? All the evidence we have given earlier is of someone born in a hamlet. And see the power of selfless love, what it has created. Imagination as a way of knowing is emphasized by IB curriculum. Are we firing the imagination of children with Alexander the Great, or are we firing it with Jesus the Good? This is a clash not of semantics but of value systems. At a time when values, attitudes, and character have become the focal point for education, we cannot shy away from uncomfortable questions. Or can we? I pause to seek your reply and end the session here. Thank you so much for your time and attention.